Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today, I'm going to be tier list ranking every 2026 Senate candidate for the swing and competitive battleground states only, so not the solid red or solid blue states, just the competitive ones itself. And in the previous video, I did do the same thing, but for the governor's race, now we're going to be doing the Senate. But before we get started, make sure you guys are subscribed, click the bell so you don't miss all my content. Press the like button, share this video. Don't forget, we have memberships. If you're interested, you can find a link to that in the description section. So we have 4 tiers, 4 sections that we will be using: awful, below average, strongly decent, and electoral juggernaut. So let's begin, starting off with Alaska's 2026 Senate race for the midterms. You have Dan Sullivan. I'm going to be placing him in the strongly decent candidate, even though I do have him losing, and majority of polls do so as well. He's still a very strong, decent candidate. He won by a margin of, I believe, 11 points last time. That's double digits, so it would not make sense if I put him anything below that. Now, he's losing. Main reason why is because his opponent is just too strong, which is why Mary Peltola has to also be strongly decent as well. Because if she wasn't strongly decent, he would not be losing this race. She is overwhelmingly popular in the state of Alaska, especially among Native American voters. Dan Sullivan is considered a very good Republican. He was seen as popular up until recently. He's started to lose his popularityness, and now his approval rating has dipped in the low 40s to high 30s, which is not good. So if this was a few years ago, then Dan Sullivan would be way more popular than he is now. Matter of fact, he's not really as popular anymore. Mary Peltola is uprising. I know she lost her House race in 2024, but that was a red wave year. This is a blue wave year. And the last 6, 7, or 8 polls show Mary Peltola winning by at least 5 percentage points, like majority of all of them. Very consistently. Very consistent. So it looks like she's going to be winning. But in terms of the Alaska Senate race, you have 2 strong candidates, strongly decent candidates from both parties. Strong Republican going up against a too strong Democrat, which is why she wins that. Aside from that, you have the state of Michigan. Mike Rogers, I also do believe he is going in the strongly decent list. He narrowly lost in 2024. He actually almost won. He lost to Alyssa Slotkin by about 0.3%, I think the margin was. Now, in 2026, you would think that he loses because it's a blue wave year and he couldn't even win in a red wave year back in 2024. I would agree with you. But because of the circumstances that this is a very tough contested primary for the Democratic side, they can't really choose who they want. It looks like Abdul El-Sayed might become their nominee. And he is an awful candidate, which is why I'm going to be placing Abdul El-Sayed in the awful category. It looks like right now he's polling higher than the rest of the Democrats, Mallory McMorrow and Haley Stevens, who are clearly better than Abdul in terms of polling, because there has been 5 polls conducted between Abdul El-Sayed and Mike Rogers. Mike Rogers leads every single one of those 5 polls. Not one poll is Abdul El-Sayed defeating Mike Rogers, not even one poll. On average, Rogers wins this race by 3 points if the Democrats nominate Abdul El-Sayed, which is why he's just such an awful, unelectable candidate. The only place where he actually does better than Haley Stevens and Mallory McMorrow is Dearborn, Michigan, among Arab voters, obviously. Now, Haley Stevens, I'm going to say she's going to go in the below average column. Obviously, the Democratic Party in Michigan for this specific Senate race in 2026, they don't have very good candidates. Now, she could be enough to win. The polls do have her up against Mike Rogers by 1 point, so obviously better than Abdul El-Sayed, who's not even winning a single poll against Mike Rogers. Haley Stevens also is way better than Abdul El-Sayed. So those 2 candidates are a slight improvement from the awful category. I would say they are below average. Meanwhile, Mike Rogers, a Republican, is a strongly decent candidate. You have Maine, Susan Collins. I do believe she's an electoral juggernaut, but looks like she's going to lose. I know polls always say she's going to lose, but she ends up winning somehow and massively overperforming. But I truly believe 2026 is the time where she gets unseated. Her time has come, in my opinion. You take a look at what's going on with her opponent, Graham Plattner. He's facing a little backlash. I don't think it's going to do too much damage. It might actually gain voters with his, I believe, Nazi tattoo. I believe that's what he had. Some people say he's going to lose voters with that tattoo. I think he actually, to be honest with you, in today's world might gain some a bit. Graham Plattner, I think, is a very strong, decent Democratic candidate. It does not matter that Susan Collins is electoral juggernaut. She still can very well be unseated. Basically, every single poll has Graham Plattner defeating her by at least 5 percentage points. I think his average is about 6 or 7. So if that's the case, Maine, similar, just like to Alaska, so the total opposite of Michigan, which you had a bunch of terrible Democratic candidates. Maine and Alaska for the Senate, I think, have two very good candidates on both parties. Susan Collins, Graham Plattner are very strong on the opposite aisle. You have Alaska, Mary Patola, Dan Sullivan, two strong candidates. But in this case, in both cases, I think the Democrats win. So I think Graham Plattner actually does win. But that's that for Maine. You have Texas. North Carolina. Let's go to North Carolina. You have Michael Whatley. I think is an awful candidate. To be honest with you, he's a below average candidate. I wouldn't go that far into saying he's an awful candidate. No, he's not. I'm not going to put him in the awful category just because his polling could have been worse if it was another Republican. He's not the worst Republican you can put, but he's also not the best. Michael Whatley is just like meh. He's not going to defeat Roy Cooper. Roy Cooper is indeed the last and final electoral juggernaut I will be putting in today's video for this category. Roy Cooper was the governor in the state of North Carolina, a very purple state. Meanwhile, he's a Democrat, and they elected Trump by 3 percentage points. Now, Roy Cooper, I believe he's going to win by about 6 or 5. That's the margin I'm assuming, which is in line with the actual polling average of, I believe, 5.5 percentage points or so. So that's that. You have Nebraska's Senate race. Pete Ricketts, I believe, is a strongly decent Republican candidate. I think he's a very good Republican candidate. He's very popular in the state of Nebraska, so therefore I do believe he's going to win. My margin prediction is probably about 4 percentage points or so. And in 2024, his opponent, the independent candidate Dan Osborne, lost to Deb Fischer. Deb Fischer is weaker than Pete Ricketts. So you may be wondering, then Dan Osborne's going to lose by even more than what he did in 2024. He lost by 7 points. Maybe he'll lose by more this time around. Nope, that's not the case. Even though Pete Ricketts is better than Deb Fischer, he's still going to win by less than Deb Fischer because simply polarization. Polarization is a huge factor, which got Sherrod Brown unseated in 2022. Dan Osborne, similar to Pete Ricketts, is a strongly decent independent candidate. Not only he wins Democrat support, independent obviously, because he is one himself, but he also gets a good amount of Republican support. Not saying he's going to unseat Pete Ricketts. That is not going to happen. A lot of people, including myself, will be shocked if that's the case. Moving on to Texas, you have James Talarico. In terms of fundraising, I think he's the number 2 in terms of the most money raised for his campaign funds. In terms of advertisements, I believe first is Jon Ossoff from Georgia, who's raised $27 million. I believe James Talarico has raised nearly $20 million. The best out of any other candidate, Republican or Democrat, aside from Jon Ossoff. No one can defeat Jon Ossoff in terms of his numbers. I think we can all agree with that. But James Talarico is a strongly decent Democratic candidate. He is polling, I believe, a 7 to 8 point margin from the last 2 polls conducted in the state of Texas. I know that's outrageous. That's not going to happen. That's very off from the actual outcome. James Talarico is not going to win by 7 or 8 percentage points. If he even is lucky to win, it'll only be like 1% or even under, within 0 to 1 percentage point. I think a more realistic outcome is Paxton wins by 1%. I think it's going to be closer than 2018. I think Talarico's a slight improvement compared to, actually a massive improvement compared to Beto O'Rourke. Beto O'Rourke wanted to take people's guns away, and that's what he said, or something like that, and that's what ended his campaign, pretty much. James Talarico has not made that much of a stupid mistake just yet. I don't want to jinx him. I don't believe he is. I think he's smart. I do believe that. So Ken Paxton, it takes me to him. He's an awful candidate. He's going to be the last candidate in the awful category, him and Abdul El-Sayed. Ken Paxton, obviously, the reason why he's an awful candidate, number one, is because Donald Trump is not even endorsing him. And that tells you that. But the truth is that he is only going to win, if he does win, just by not even more than 2 percentage points. Let's be honest here. John Cornyn is way better. Even though John Cornyn is also not really MAGA, some folks on the MAGA side say he votes with the Democrats sometimes when it comes to gun policy. I believe so. But John Cornyn is a slight improvement to Ken Paxton. So I'm going to be placing Cornyn in the below average column. Or actually, I would say strongly decent, to be honest with you. I think in between below average and strongly decent, somewhere there, I'm going to be a little nice to John Cornyn. I'll place him in the strongly decent. Looks like he's not going to be the nominee, though. He won against Cornyn by about 2 points in the primaries. Now it's a runoff in which Ken Paxton can defeat John Cornyn just because Trump has decided not to endorse anybody, not to make an endorsement at all. So moving on to the last state, or Georgia, actually, not the last one. The last one will be Ohio to finish off this video. But I talked about Jon Ossoff earlier with his campaign funds. You can kind of get a hint that I am placing him in a strongly decent category. He's going to win by probably about 3 points is my estimated margin against Mike Collins, which I will place Mike Collins in the below average category. He is polling better than the other Republicans, so I will give him that. That's why he's not awful, because he is polling out of better than any other Republican that he is going up against, So I do think Mike Collins isn't that bad. He's kind of like Michael Whatley tier, or maybe slightly better than Michael Whatley. But Jon Ossoff is just too good of a candidate. Obviously, he's not as popular as someone like Raphael Warnock, especially among African-American voters, where it really matters the most in Atlanta, the suburbs there, the metropolitan area, and Georgia in general. So I think Jon Ossoff is a strongly decent candidate. And then you have the last final state, Ohio Senate race. You have John Husted. I believe is also a strongly decent candidate. There's a lot of strongly decent candidates in this video. And I also do believe his opponent, Sherrod Brown, is also another strongly decent candidate. You have two good candidates for Ohio's Senate race in the upcoming 2026 Senate midterms. Polls keep going back and forth. I believe John Husted has a slight advantage with the averages. At the end of the day, John Husted wins by a point or two, somewhere around there. I think he will win by like 1.5 if I were to have to take a guess. Sherrod Brown is a very strong Democrat, but it's Ohio. The state has gone a little too far to the right at this point for Sherrod Brown to overcome. That's just my opinion. So this is my tier list ranking every 2026 Senate candidate for every battleground swing state. This has nothing to do with my opinion of these candidates. It's more so their electability and their odds of actually winning. So this is not what I actually personally think of these candidates. This is their electability specifically. And same thing with my governor's tier list in the other video. You can take a look at that. It's on your screen right now. But one last final reminder is to subscribe, click the bell so you don't miss my content. Press the like button, share this video. Don't forget we have memberships if you're interested. You can find links in the description section. Thank you everyone for watching.